Good morning from Vietnam, Mike. Thanks a lot for spending your evening joining our Inside Sharing show and share your stories with our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners of the show, I want to say thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure. I love to be spending your morning on Thursday, my evening on Wednesday with you, halfway around the world in such high quality audio and video.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, Mike, since you haven't been to Vietnam, please accept our, invitation to come in here. And so the next time if you or your family ever travel to this part of the world, please let us know. You have a new friend, new family, and then we will be so happy to take you guys around town, show you our people, our country. Okay?
That's so kind of you. The same extension for you in Boston.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Mike, in our culture, it's very honored we can have you to introduce a little bit about who you are and the works that you do. Would you please do that for us?
Absolutely. I have a strange background. I was a professional sailor, an Olympic hopeful, and an Olympic sailing coach before I went into business. And I realized that if I sailed for the rest of my life, I would never have a wife and family, and I really wanted to have kids. So I came off the water as a coach and got into business, but it informed how I lead people. I ended up having the good fortune to going to Harvard Business School, where I learned about a business model where I buy a used company with other people's money. And I've done that 4 times. I've bought and sold 4 companies and run them for about 5+ years. And the Predictive Index, which I currently run, I've been running for the last 8 years. It is the last company I hope to run, and it's about talent, and it's really my dream job. So that is my story.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Hey, you have a phenomenal career journey, and then you introduce this to us in less than 2 minutes. So we need more time to dive in into that journey altogether. So let's travel time. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful. Hey, Mike, when I was young, I wanted to become an astronaut. So wearing the astronaut suit and jumping in different planet. But life did not give me any chance to do that works whatsoever. So I'm wondering, when you was young, what was your dream about your future, though?
It really was about sailing. Every chance I had, I spent on the water. I, um, coaching sailing, uh, racing sailboats, socially with my family. My dad was in the Coast Guard. We had just a very water-based maritime culture, and any chance I had to spend on the water was better than time spent on land. And as a result of that childhood, I became very good at sailing and racing sailboats. Now, this is not a noble enterprise, but I was good at it.
Hmm.
And I did very well and won a national championship when I was 16, and went on to college sailing, and did very well there. We won a couple of national championships in college, and I tried out for the 1992 Olympics. And those Olympics were in Barcelona,
Ah,
and I was an alternate for the 1992 Olympic team, for the U.S. team. And in '96, I thought about becoming an athlete again for '96, uh, but I did not come from substantial financial means, so I had to put food on the table,
hmm.
and and I became a coach. So I effectively was living my dream. The dream was to pursue sailing at the highest level and to spend as much time on the water as I could, and I was living that dream. And it's an honor and it's a privilege to get to live your your childhood dream. Um, but what's interesting is when that dream starts falling apart, and you say, "This maybe wasn't how I envisioned it to be."
Hmm.
When you realize that the year of the '96 Olympics, I lived 330 days on the road out of a duffel bag. it was very romantic. I don't regret a single day of that year. But I also realized that maybe that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. Hey, Mike, do you by any chance know a gentleman by the name Joe Jacoby?
Yes. Do you know? Do you know him?
Yeah, I know him. I had him on the show. I even wrote his stories on my book also. He's also participate on the Barcelona Olympic 1992 with you, and they won the gold medal for the canoeing, the river canoeing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll let him
that's
know.
fantastic.
Yeah, the world is so small, right?
It
Yeah.
does seem small sometimes.
So how do you feel, leaving your, you know, put your dream as a child apart and then start going to the business world and get, like, and not doing the selling anymore after years of doing that and loving, have a love for it? How was it feeling?
It was a difficult decision to make
Hmm.
because there was the uncertainty of what would be next. But getting into business, it was the first time in my life, and I started working for a sailboat manufacturer. It was kind of halfway,
Hmm.
so I could still do sailing, but I could start doing business. And I got really excited by business. I had a great boss. He was very open with his management style. He let me participate in a lot of the strategic decisions. I had a little bit of equity ownership in the company, so I felt like I could participate in the upside. It was the first time in my life that something as exciting as sailing happened to me, and it was the competition of business.
Ah.
Different game, right? You're not racing around in circles on a sailboat, um, you know, but you're competing nonetheless. And I realized when I was at the sailboat manufacturer that while I had a great boss, the sailing industry, selling sailboats, manufacturing sailboats, is not a very good industry. It's low margins. A lot of people are in that industry for what we call in the United States lifestyle
Ah.
industries. They're either wealthy people who are coming back because they just love boats and they don't really need to make money. They already have money.
Hmm.
Or it's people who can't get out of the industry because that's all they're really good at. So to find mentorship and great thought leadership in the marine space is difficult.
Ah.
Not impossible. There are great people who work in the marine space, and I have many friends who are very talented in the marine space. So I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but I figured I needed to go get a true education, and that getting into Harvard Business School. And I think the only reason I got into Harvard Business School because I was an Olympic coach at 26.
Ah.
Was going to one of the world's best institutions for learning about business. And I consider myself a mistake admin. I'm not sure why they let me in, but I'm glad they did because it dramatically changed my life. But it wasn't long after giving up the dream of sailing, going into industry when I go, there's more to life than racing around in boats, which was a true epiphany. And it didn't happen overnight, but it definitely happened.
Wow. And then since when you starting to buy a an old company and turn it around and selling it, since when you start having that new what do you call it, that new passion though?
Yeah, it was actually a case. The Harvard Business School runs on case studies. So you read about a business, you learn about an entrepreneur, and one of the cases in my first year of Harvard Business School was a case called Jim Sharp, and it was about a guy who did exactly this. The model is called a search fund. What you end up doing is you raise money from about 10 high net worth individuals, and they fund you to find a company to buy and then help you buy it. And you don't make any money unless they make money. You make a salary, but you don't make any equity ownership until they make money. So it's a way for people who don't have money to buy a company. But it's almost like a way of entrepreneurship if you don't have a good idea, where you can buy someone else's old idea, see that it might be a diamond in the rough, and make it your own, run it, grow it, fix it, change it, modify it, ideally sell it. And the day I heard this case, I was like, holy shit, you can do that? Like, this was like an epiphany. I was like, I want to do this. And it was funny because not a lot of people wanted to give me a job after Harvard Business School. I had a weird background. I was a sailor. I was a sailing coach. It's not like I went to Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or worked for some big company like GE or Medtronic. I was a weird person. So with a weird background, I didn't have a lot of options. So I go, I'll buy my own company, give myself the CEO job. That sounds good. And like literally the day I heard about this, I was like, I'm all in. This is fantastic. And that's what I've been doing for the last 22 years.
Wow. So basically you work for yourself ever since you start, a professional career. Then you build company, you buy a company, and then you run it, you sell it, right? So,
basically, and one of my great honors is my first boss in business, the guy who ran the sailboat manufacturer. He's one of my investors, and I've made him a lot of money. And nothing makes me happier than actually having this old mentor, who invested in one of his mentees, and to turn around and he's about 10, 15 years older than me. We're very good friends. We call each other on business as peers, and it's a great relationship.
Well, but Mike, each company that you buy have a different industry, have a different group of people, and a different segmentation. So how could you pick one, get in there, and make a turnaround for that to be a profitable business for your investor, though?
I mean, it's a difficult question. The first time you do it, you're not sure if it's going to work. We used a model that had three verticals. One, it was marketplace attractiveness. Is this an attractive marketplace? Do they have competitive dynamics that are healthy? What is your competitive position in the marketplace? Are you the highest quality? Are you a lowest price? What's the nature? Maybe you're a regional player. What's that? And then what is the value creation opportunities? How can you fix it? Now, we superimposed on that, are we credible operators of this? Like, can I go run this? I looked at a women's fashion company and I'm like, nope, not me. I got no skills in fashion. I looked at a company that made rims for automobiles, and these were gangster style rims, like the most expensive, pimped out rims in the aftermarket space. And I was like, no, definitely not me. I was more of a business to business person. I like the nuts and bolts of that. So you find a company. Our first one was not very big. We paid $6.5 million for it, US, and ran it for 5 years and sold it for $35 million. So really fixed it. And after the first one, you're like, hey, I could do this again. That was great, and I'm more confident. And it was actually at the first company that I realized that we're going to turn these companies around by creating world-class teams of people. And that's where I got to go back to my old coaching days, like watching world-class athletes and how they operated and seeing world-class teams operate and realizing I don't know how to build it in business yet, but I know what it looks like when I see it. And I want to win with and through people. And really at our first company, my partner, Daniel, who did this crazy thing with me, he and I really committed ourselves to learning how to be great people leaders. And doing it with and through people, you realize it doesn't matter the industry. It doesn't really matter the company, hardware, software. You know, obviously higher gross margins are better, higher recurring revenues are better. But if you pay the right price for a company, you identify how you're going to fix it. It's a little like buying and flipping homes.
Yeah.
You know, you buy a used home, you're like, okay, we're going to do the bathrooms, we're going to do the kitchen, we're going to put a new roof on it, some new landscaping, sell it. Instead of it taking 6 months like a house, it takes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years
Wow.
to really turn around a business.
Wow. It's good to see life going to full circle, right? So your works and your selling time at the Olympic Games with the world athlete teams, right? Give you the knowledge of how to work as a team, like world class team, and now you bring that experience onto the business world and then create your own world class team also. So you wrote a book about teams also. And what journey, how that journey happened, Mike?
Yeah, the science of dream teams is the book. It was a passion project. I wrote most of it during COVID, although we were planning it before the pandemic. And I had access to a tremendous amount of data because the predictive index is in the talent space.
Oh.
We help companies hire talented people and manage their people to greatness. It's a discipline we call talent optimization. But I have all of this data. I had 40, 50 million data points of behavioral assessments on people. I had hundreds of thousands of job assessments. What does it mean to be a good controller? What are the behavioral requirements? What does it mean to be a good CFO? What does it mean to be a good product development person? And I had all of this data on teams as well, on team dynamics. And we could bring a lot of that data to bear, along with the fact that I've run 4 companies and coached Olympic teams. I actually went back and ran some analytics. I've done behavioral and cognitive analytics on an America's Cup teams. I've done behavioral and cognitive analytics on Olympic caliber athletes, on college athletes, on professional athletes, and bringing a lot of that data to bear to tell a really compelling story to business people. That is, in fact, sports is 30 years ahead of business with respect to assessing, grooming, developing, and maximizing talent.
Wow. Tell us, what is that you're finding in the book? Could you do that?
Say that one more time. Is that defined in the book?
Yeah.
It is. We try and make it a little like a cookbook, so you can read a chapter on hiring. You can read a chapter on coaching. You can read a chapter on culture, and one at a time have a little bit of an instruction on how to do it. It's not easy. It's a lifelong journey. And the reason is people are complicated. We, human beings, are the most complicated device on the planet. You get the greatest joy and you also get the greatest tragedy from humans, and we don't come with instructions. So, learning how to manage people to their best is a difficult game, but it can be done at scale. It can be done to outcompete your competitors, and it can be done to even save money because you can learn how to recruit younger talent and develop it, as opposed to just paying for the best and the brightest who've already been there and done that.
Mike, each of us have different kind of dream, right? So when you wrote about dream teams, what is your definition of a dream team?
I wish I could tell you that there was one definition. It really is the team a good fit for the work that needs to be done? So the senior team of Mass General Hospital, one of the best medical institutions on the planet, they are a center of excellence associated with Harvard Medical School. Like, they're amazing at what they do, and they're really good at running a single hospital. They would be terrible at running Uber. They would be awful at running our company. And just like our company would be terrible at running a hospital. If our team, we move fast, we try and innovate, we sort of make decisions and ask questions later, typically. If we ran a hospital, we would literally change the process, and all of a sudden bodies would be showing up on gurneys with toe tags. And they'd be like, what happened? You're like, we changed the process and people started dying. And you're like, but we'll figure it out. And you're like, that doesn't work in the medical field. That would be a terrible team. Much like the hospital team, if you think about the Hippocratic, in the United States, we have the Hippocratic Oath. You may have that as well, Hippocrates. It says, first, do no harm. Medically. The medical profession is conservative. It gets measured on outcomes. It gets measured about success rate of complex procedures and repetition. They're the opposite of a startup. They're a process factory. So the dream team depends on the work that you need to do. And each type of work requires a different type of team. So if I told you that you needed to put together the best sales organization on the planet, the best 10 salespeople on the planet, the first question, you're like, what am I selling? And you might be like, if you're selling $2 million medical imaging devices that are state-of-the-art, cutting edge, and the gross margins are 80%, that's a much different sales process that I'm selling tuna fish, on the docks. It's a very different process, and it's the team that would be good at one is definitely different than the team that would be good for another.
Well, Mike, over the past couple of years, right, because of the pandemic hits, a lot of books written was on this, on that, pandemic and how it impact the workplace, the culture and stuff. So not a lot of new books reading about teams and dream teams like the one you share, right? So I'm interested to know what the characteristic of a dream teams, heading to the future after the pandemic like this, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think once you get a team that's a good fit for the work, it's around are the teams aligned on the work that needs to be done? Does everyone have a shared goal? Is that shared goal really measurable so that people realize that, hey, today I did a good job. Yesterday I didn't do a good job. Is there that? Are they in it together? That if you and I are on the same team, do I care about your success as much as my own success? Because we have a we attitude of shared success versus an I. Or am I just trying to get ahead and I don't really give a hoo-ha about you? Those are elements that are really important. Teams also need to understand the dynamic that you and I aren't the same, that I may need to modify myself when communicating with you or making decisions with you or researching data with you or for you. And likewise, you need to modify yourself for me. If you are deeply introverted and I am extroverted, I may want to talk through things and you may want to think through things. If I'm impatient, I want to make a decision now. If you're patient and data-driven, you actually want to take the time to do the analytics. We have to understand those differences. And then once you do those things, so we have shared goals, measurable goals, we have a we mindset, so we're in this together, we understand each other's differences, that's when we can start working real issues. And the reason I bring this up, if you've ever seen sport at a high level, the best teams sometimes take time out without their coaches. And what do? They get together in a huddle and they talk. And they're like, I'm getting beaten by the best player in the world over there. Let's call him Lionel Messi. And they're like, I need your help, because if we don't deal with this, we will not win. Lionel Messi's better than me, and one person cannot stop them alone. We need to do that. So great teams have this dynamic huddle where they work the issues themselves. That they don't need an outside force like a boss or a manager or a board of directors. They respond to the challenges in real time. And that's when you know, because it's not about, well, Mike, you can't guard Lionel Messi, we're going to fire you, you must stick. And you're like, no, he's the best in the world. No one can.
Okay, if you can pick one chapter in the book, which is your favorite one, and I know the question is not fair, but if you can pick one to share with our audience, what would that chapter is, Mike?
I would pick the introduction. Okay. Because I think if you read, you like the introduction, you'll love the book. And the introduction talks about some really, what is the point of view that you need to care about talent optimization? And that's really about what is life without it. Because life without it is doing it the old-fashioned way, which is unstructured interviewing for people with jobs, or giving jobs to children or friends or high school mates, and doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe it's on proximity, or you take the first person who applies. It's not really about building world-class teams. And for certain work, that's fine. If I'm doing landscaping for a living and it's pretty minor and I just mow all the lawns on my street, it probably doesn't matter. But if I want to really create the world's best landscape architecture firm that competes for the White House or the Louvre and do world-class work, you're only going to do it with the best people.
So speaking of the talent optimization in the big picture, right? Where can we take the baby steps to get into that directions, Mike?
Yeah, we do create some pretty simple formulas for this. It starts with the question that you asked, is like, what is a dream team? And you go, it really depends on the work that needs to be done. What is your strategy? Your strategy and the work that needs to be done informs everything that you do. From there, it's like who you hire, how you hire. So it starts with design, then it goes to, what you're trying to build, then who you hire. The third step is how do you inspire those people to be their best? And the fourth thing is diagnostic. It's like, if you do the design, hire, and inspire well, your diagnostic, your engagement, your performance, your metrics go up over time. Those four elements. But the trick is, like, how do you do those elements? And how do you do them in a sea of where everyone does it the wrong way? Most people are doing it the wrong way, which means even little gains can mean huge results.
So what is the right way then, Mike?
I think we need to change our attitude on this discipline. Tell me about the last person that you hired.
I hired one of the very senior salesperson in the industry, so that he can help me.
How did you find them?
I found them through a conversation, through a beer conversation, but then it was referred to me by one of the friends.
Okay, so a referral, that's often a great place because you trust those people. How did you measure this person against the requirements of that role and how they fit in with the team?
We are also in the B2B business, so we don't have a lot of people in the team, right? So in terms of measurement, his capability, again, we talk about our business and we let him share his, I share my vision about the business, and I let him to take time to think about the business model that we are doing, and then how it can take place as a commercial leader for the company. So that was a process. All right. And in terms of the second question you asked about, how it's fitting with the team. So we invited one person in the finance team, one person in the HR team out together in a non-formal interview where we just had dinner together. and we get about 2 and 3 hours of drinking, talking to see how the team had the feeling about him. And then we did the last one. It was just asking him, how he felt about the leadership team within the organization, and that pretty much it. And yeah, so he was on board just like after 2 times a meeting.
No, so but it sounds like you invested in cultural fit with the dinner and which is great. But were there any truly objective measurements that you measured them against a benchmark, or what would great be?
Mm. I've been through that one a few times in the past with a company that it was started from the Singapore, right? And then they've been interviewed for like 6 different rounds, talking with different person, run different assessments. And I didn't like that way, Mike. So maybe in my opinion, I feel it was lengthy and it was like put talent onto a test. And sometimes it's, in the agile world like this, we talent has a lot of options out there also. So, it's so I don't know. I want to hear from you.
No, it's a difficult question because right now with employment rates so low and people having opportunities and this pretty global world, that it's competitive. And if you do the bloated interview where it's 6 rounds and it's a trudge versus do you do a very lightweight interview, though they can both work. But if you do the lightweight interview, you need a method after a certain period of time to say, we're going to have more errors with the lighter weight system. What do we do with errors? How do we get rid of a person? And it's hard to do, but how do you get rid of a person when you made an error? They may know it, you may know it, but for whatever reason, you don't deal with it. And what's the cost of that error? And was it worth it? If it was the head of your sales for 1,000-person sales organization, maybe not worth getting it wrong. If it's one salesperson in a small company that came as a referral, that is a pretty good cultural fit, maybe there's a good chance. And the cost isn't as high. So the reason I went deep with you, and I'm not saying that you have incorrect hiring practices, is the biggest competitor to talent optimization is really people doing it the old way. And feeling so comfortable with this as well, it worked. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What percentage do you think people get it right?
50-50.
Where and I'll define getting it right. They got the person they needed and they got the person they thought they would get.
I work in the HR industry for long. I think that the success rate for a long term was low. I think it's less than 30%.
There is evidence that you are in the HR industry because most people don't guess that low, but it is about a third. And I think even if you do world-class work, you probably only get it up to 80%. I mean, it's hard to get it into the 90s.
Yeah.
If you try and push it too hard in the 90s, you can struggle by getting enough people.
Mike, thanks a lot for sharing that, because my line of work, I also hiring a lot of senior people for big companies over here. So we scan the market and we look at the talents in a way that I will map them onto based on what they're capable of and what they potentially will be capable of doing for the available clients that we are servicing, right? And then from there, I came to the founder, to the CEO or the president of the company and say, hey, I have this gentleman who can be just really, really good running the digital team, the e-commerce team for your organization, and here's why. So we build the case studies, and we have a mix of success between companies now really open to take on, the people and then build the new structure around the people. While many companies out there, especially in the MNC world, they don't. They have the vacancy first, then they fill the people in later. And to me, And in your field at predicted, predict index, what do you see would be the better way for organization if they had a chance to find good talents like that?
Oh, that's a difficult question. It's so very industry specific,
Mm.
and it really has a lot to do with the nature of the role and the cost of getting it wrong. I think in lower risk roles, um, people can learn, and you can just hire and train and redirect internally. I think when you get to more mission critical roles, that if I was going to hire the new head of product development at a battery manufacturer,
Mm.
you know, there's only three big battery manufacturers in the world. Let's just say it's Panasonic. They're one of the three big uh, battery manufacturers. You can't you can't mess around with hiring the head of development at a battery manufacturer and not define the role really well and do it slowly.
Mm.
So I use those two extreme examples. I'm a fan of companies doing both ways.
Ah.
You take the mission critical roles that you know are mission critical and really costly if you get wrong. You define them well. You have great benchmarking, and and you hire carefully. I think the roles that are lower in the organization, more plentiful, and there's places to put them when you get it wrong. Because sometimes the person's not bad, they're just not a good fit for what they started with.
Ah.
So you can put them somewhere else and train them. And the beautiful part of this is you can now hire people without college degrees, without high school degrees. As a matter of fact, I'm mentoring an employee in my organization. She does not have a college degree, never went to college, and she was just promoted to vice president.
Mm.
And she's making high, not high six figures, but healthy six-figure salary, no college education, and only been in the workplace for about 11 years. And you're like, how does that happen? The person is incredibly talented, but if you measure in the United States, you usually can't get a VP job if you don't have a college degree.
Mm.
It's just unheard of. But the fact is, you don't need it today.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have, but open-minded hiring is find the talent and train the talent and develop the talent. And I think the companies that are doing both, the mission-critical roles, as well as finding raw talent and letting it breed and develop in its own organization, those are the ones that are going to win.
Mm.
And I go to the sports teams. Most good sports teams have development programs
Mm.
where that you develop, even like Formula One. Formula One, the best Formula One programs have driver development programs. Not all of them make it. They can take more risks down there, but by the time they get to the big game, they've got a lot of miles and they know what they're getting.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful. Mike, I have two last questions for you for today. All right. And the first question out of the two is about thinking. I really like the way you articulate your thinking, and my wife and I we've been in this quest to help people to think better for a long time because we believe our thinking capability these days is diminishing. So every chance that we interact with an expert or a deep thinker, we will ask this question. Uh, Mike, how have you been helping you to expand your own ability to think over these years?
I actually think for me, it's exercise.
Exercise.
Exercise. I
Yeah.
think, I've been, as a former athlete, then I let myself go for a little while.
Yeah.
And in your 20s, you get away with it. But then you get into your 30s, you don't get away with it anymore. If you're not exercising, your body tells you. And I realized I felt terrible. I didn't have energy. I started an exercise regimen. Now, I'm not in the fitness of an Olympic athlete, but that the exercise, like, it helps you eat better, you sleep better, you have more clarity of thought, you have more energy, and I think it helps the entire thinking process. But having said that, as we get older, and if you're not there yet, High, I don't suspect you seem 15 years ish younger than I. But as you start getting into your 50s, your game changes. I'm slowing down on thinking. And it's not so much clock speed, how fast I'm thinking, or how much complexity I can process. But now it's morphing into pattern recognition and longer problems that you can ponder over as opposed to shorter, faster problems, and which leads you to be a better mentor, a better coach, better at maybe managing because you've seen these patterns before. So I think people, like, underlying, I said, if you did one thing, it's have a good, healthy exercise regimen. But I also think it's pay attention to where you are in this thinking curve. Because the 80-year-old can still be a great thinker, but they're not going to win a competition on speed of thinking. And that's true. I mean, we have a very old president, Joe Biden. He's the oldest in the history of our country. And people are critical of him because he's approaching 80 years old, and they don't think he's thinking fast enough. And there may be aspects of his job where he needs to think really fast. And he has advisors to help him through that. But there are a lot of jobs that if you're going to be the leader of the United States, that maybe you need to think slow and see pattern recognitions. And maybe it's not as horrible of a thing. It doesn't play well on TV, but maybe it's not such a bad thing. Now, I'm not trying to say it's good or bad, but I think every individual on this curve has to realize where they are in this curve, because if they don't, the 50-year-old trying to play the 30-year-old game, that doesn't work.
Beautiful, beautiful. So exercise and pay attention where you're on the thinking curve, right? Beautiful.
For sure.
So you're the first person talking about the thinking curve out of the 483 person joining share. So it's a new learning for me. Thank you very much.
That's great. And I'm excited for you because you're still going up. I'm on my way down.
Mike, the last question for you is about the future. So we knew that, we knew now that you was an athlete, in the past, really love selling, working on the selling team and coaching the Olympic team also, then get into the business world and very successful in business world, wrote your book, and now we want to go into the future a little bit. Okay, is there anything exciting you are working on you want to share with us now so we can celebrate with you in advance?
I'm working on being a lot more open-minded about the nature of work. I think the pandemic has pushed us into an accelerated environment where people are quitting jobs at a faster rate. People are moving countries now that the lockdowns are coming down. People are changing careers, working in different ways. I think this is just the start of it. The days of us going to offices 9 to 5, for 50 weeks a year, and struggling with work-life balance is changing. And I don't know where it's going to land, but I'm trying to be very open-minded to this change, because I think when you have these rates of change on a massive scale like this, that there's a lot of opportunity. And not just opportunity to make money. People will make money for sure. But opportunity to build new world-class organizations in different ways.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I believe that with your thinking, with your background, with the team, the dream teams that you've been building, then you can figure it out, and then you can help the people to figure it out also, Mike. So thanks a lot for doing that, all right?
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I like the way you process. I love the way you create an arc to your interviewing. You can tell that you've done this in the 400 times, and it's been a pleasure to be invited to speak with you.
Thank you very much for coming to our show. And for your friend at Love Pop, right? If you can introduce him to me or her to me, then I will invite the person out for beers, and then we can take a photo together and we send to you. So
I will do that. I will introduce you to John Wise.
John Wise,
from Love Pop.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
He's a great guy, and he travels to Vietnam a lot, and he's married to a Vietnamese woman, and they travel back to see family quite a bit. So
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So please introduce him to me so that the next time they are here in Vietnam, that I'll make sure that I will spend time and invite them for, a cup of coffee, a cup of beers together. All right.
great. Thank you, Hao Win.
Thank
It's
you
been a
very
pleasure.
much. Bye bye, my friend.
Great day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.